Hi, I'm Greg Ewan with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. I'm really excited about this conversation today. I'm talking with Lyle Dizon. He's the co-founder and EVP at AutoVision. AutoVision is a company that Reynolds acquired a couple years back, and it's been a really fun ride seeing what Lyle and AJ have built, but also being able to bring that into the fold, into the Reynolds retail management system. So we're going to probably go all over the place today, Lyle. I'm sure you have a perspective that I'm really interested in. You know, you've spent a lot of time in car dealerships. There's a lot of stuff going on in the industry. I want to pick your brain. I'll get your perspective on. But first, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, Greg, thanks for having me.
For sure, and we'll get into a lot. We'll talk a lot about artificial intelligence, how that's impacting the used vehicle market. Certainly, how you appraise a vehicle, how you price a vehicle, how frequently you can do that now. We'll get into all that stuff. But before we dive in, I was hoping you could share a little bit, Lyle, about your background. You're still a young guy, but you have a lot of experience in the auto industry. So if you don't mind sharing that, that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah, I am young, but doing a startup aged me probably 10 years, right? I mean, it was just full of ups and downs. But yeah, so my background, AJ, obviously you've met him. He's the what I call big brain. So he's probably one of the smartest guys that I've had the pleasure of being around. And for me, I'm the car guy on the team. So I've been in the industry now for, I think close to 22 years. Started in sales, worked my way up, spent a lot of time learning the used car business. So auctions, buying and acquisition. And in 2012, I started my own dealership. I was always heavily involved in on the acquisition side. That's, the thing that kind of kept my gears moving, right? Just trying to solve this never-ending puzzle of how do I buy better? How do I, price my vehicles smarter and really just ultimately grow. So in 2018, that's when AJ and I, and we have another co-founder, Avery, and we kind of banded together and I walked him through a lot of the pain points that I was seeing, as a power user of a lot of the legacy systems, right? I mean, I've used them all and I was just hoping to, I would send requests in and just like, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me, right? And really just falling on deaf ears. And maybe it's because the platform that it was built on is too old, right? I mean, now, being in tech for almost 7 years, like I understand that, it's really about the foundation that you built, right? You can't build extra rooms if you ran out of space, right? If you built it on an island. So from there I said, hey man, nothing has changed, right? Some of the legacy systems when they first came out, groundbreaking, phenomenal, right? Actually gives you visibility into the market. What are my competitors doing? Where should I be priced at? Now, we all know what happened with margin compression. You had the folks like the car gurus and, the velocity method from vAuto. And, I think what, the nail in the coffin, the thing that a lot of people don't talk about is the simulcast when they bought online buying at the auto auction.
Sure.
Right. I remember when I was young, right? When I was in my 20s, me and some of my mentors, we'd fly out to different states, almost kind of like our secret fishing spot, because there it's, hey, you know what? Trucks or SUVs or highline vehicles sell for less there. And we would ship them back home and, all is well, right? And, the moment that they brought simulcast buying online, it brought buyers from everywhere, right? And it really disrupted the space. So now, when you're buying cars, right, profit margins are thin, you need an edge. And you can't get that edge when you're looking at legacy tools, competitive sets. The data set is too broad. I don't know if you're familiar with the metric MDS, that's market day supply.
Sure.
So, what that does is it looks at the entire market, all of the vehicles that are available, and it divides that by the daily sales rate. The problem with that is if I'm selling a vehicle that has 30,000 miles, right, and I consider myself a high performing dealer, like I know what the heck I'm doing, I'm pricing it right, but then now you're grouping me with independents, buy here, pay here lots, guys that are, where hope is their strategy, right? They're just wildly overpriced. So when you average that out, like that's not the true daily sales rate. And why in AutoVision, we implemented days to sell. So it's a metric that we have in addition to market day supply, where we can look at only the winners. And when I say winners, it's folks that actually sold a car, right?
Yep.
Like these are the guys that sold a car. So the data that we have not only will show you active inventory, we also record every vehicle that leaves the market, and we take a snapshot. Where are they priced at relative to market? So rather than just guessing and using broad data, now I could go into AutoVision, look at the sold panel, right, and see like, okay, so it looks like so there were 10 vehicles that recently sold. Okay. 8 of those vehicles were sold by on brand franchise stores. And let's say I'm
Yep.
looking at a Honda, right?
Hmm.
Market day supply on this thing is low. Just naturally, I think, hey, this is a good buy for me. But hold on, let's take a step back. It's good for the Honda stores because I'm seeing that 2 of the off brand dealers that sold this car, they're holding on to that inventory for over 30 days, right? And they sold it for way less. Because really, when you look at it, naturally, a Honda store that's selling an on-brand used vehicle has an advantage over other
Sure.
dealers, right? Now, AutoVision allows you to look at that and to look at the market from your perspective, right? Now, if I'm looking at the competitive set and it looks like, hey, this vehicle has a low MDS and the days to sell is low. And when I'm looking at the competitive set, it looks like, yeah, great. On-brand dealers are selling it, but it looks like CarMax and Carvana is selling it. You got a couple Indy stores, a couple Ford stores, a couple Nissan stores. So this thing is just ready to go, right? So now I have all the proof points that I need to make an intelligent buying decision. And that's one thing. And I don't know how much time we have, but it's just things like that, right? Where rather than just giving you information, our system gives you the ability to slice and dice the data in your view that's relevant to you. And
Right.
and for the dealers that really lean into data, for some of the forward thinking dealers, like we've seen profits go up, we've seen, turn time increase or actually decrease. So they're turning cars a lot faster.
Sure.
Right. And another thing there is, by finding what's hidden in your data, it also gives you the ability to avoid traps. Right. So
Sure.
stuff that I've experienced throughout the years where looks like a good buy, but it actually isn't because it's not right.
Right.
It's not right for my store.
So what are some more of those, Lyle, like hidden variables? So there's, when you look at a car, you look at buying a car, you look at pricing a car, there are a lot of variables. And that's why, a used car manager is so valuable inside the store because they have, in most cases, the experience to know in my market, these are really the 5 things, the 10 things, the 15 things that matter, right? These are the things that are going to move the needle on a vehicle. So, they know those things and they're important. They can look for them. But so 2 questions. One is how many variables are there? What are some of maybe the needles in the haystack that aren't out in front? And then as a follow-up to that, which we can come back to, is how frequently do those need to be evaluated? Because one of the things that I think we can fall into, the trap we can fall into is, okay, we evaluate the car, we buy the car, right? We put the right number on the car when we bought it, so we acquired it for the right amount. We do the recon, we keep the recon under, whatever the number needs to be, and we put it on the lot and we set the price, and it's the right price when we set it. And so then, how frequently do we need to evaluate? Is that still the right price? Because most vehicles aren't going to sell in 2 days, right? So, how frequently do we need to evaluate? So I guess the 2-part question and a long way to get there is what are some of those hidden variables or maybe less common variables? And 2, how frequently do we need to evaluate the data?
Got it. Yeah. So to answer your question about variables, color matters, right?
Sure.
Options are huge. And the mileage range only because the mileage range directly impacts the price point and the affordability of a vehicle. So, something that you will find in AutoVision where, hey, a lot of times dealers are thinking like, man, this thing only has 8,000 miles on it. and I got it 2 or 3 grand back a buck, close to MMR. I'm going to sell this thing, right? Surprise. Like that car is going to sit on your lot because you do not have the whole picture, right? When AutoVision, we'll show you what's going on in the new car market. Chances are that vehicle that you have with low miles is priced close to what a new car is selling for, inclusive of the OEM rebates or, lease specials, right? And that's another trap that I'm talking about, and, something that you need visibility in. Another thing is color combination. So in our system, you can see what is the best performing color that sells at the highest price to market, or what is the worst performing color. So when you combine those two variables, where it's mileage range, mileage band, and color, in addition to special options, what that's really doing is giving you experience that you didn't have, right? And to kind of add to what you said about, hey, used car managers and used car directors are important. They are, because they lived it. Right? They tried, they thought that the car was good, and it ended up not being a good car. Now that's just something that they add to their experience, right? And, now they know what sells. So a lot of times dealers will ask me like, hey, well, like that all sounds great. And I don't have time to dig into the data. Well, it's like, okay, well, if you don't have time to dig into the data, then I guess you don't want to grow, right? Because if you're, if it, and that's the dealer's choice, because no two dealers are alike. They all have different strategies, different pricing strategies, approaches, and different demographics and regions, and et cetera, right? And if you're a franchise store and, you primarily sell your brand type cars and you're getting them from lease returns and everything else, then we can help you select the better performing colors, right? But in general, if you're looking to grow and expand your market, your used car manager doesn't have experience with, probably a lot of cars, right? Because he's kind of sticking to what he knows. So, with all that data there, it's again, with the variables that we have, it's color, it's the mileage band, and really just incorporating that into your buying strategy allows you to buy better.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned too, new vehicle comparable pricing, which is something that, we look back at the last, call it 5 years. Volatility in the market has really been a good thing, especially in the used car market, right? So when we see, prices go up, or when we see supply shrink, or when we see changes in demand, specifically on the new car side, that ultimately has had, what we've seen at least historically, has had a positive impact on the used car market. It creates more opportunities for you from a used car perspective, right? You have more flexibility, you can react, and ultimately you can end up growing margins on a vehicle that maybe you weren't expecting to. So as we kind of look forward, I think, this summer there's certainly some uncertainty, if not volatility, that'll happen, which seems like an opportunity for dealers, certainly in the used car space. I don't know, have you thought much about that, or what's your perspective on that?
Well, like the last 5 years have been really weird, right?
They have.
Yeah. So for the most part, you're right. If there's some weirdness going on with new cars, like there is an opportunity for used. Now, the problem that I've seen is, okay, used car prices are going up, but there weren't any new cars sold the last couple years in order for us to just pick up new inventory. So now you have an inventory scarcity problem, right? That's something that we saw a couple years after COVID, where lease returns were thin. So I think in general, once inventory levels pick up, things can start to normalize a little bit. And there still is a lot of opportunity in used cars. It's really all about finding, the right inventory mix that works for you. And for me, I'd always look inward, right? Like, what competitive advantages do I have against the market? We know that CarMax and Carvana, they're selling on ease, right? Customer satisfaction, 30-day money back guarantee. And that's why when you look at the data, they're able to sell vehicles for more than other franchise stores. Yeah. And, part of the reason why it's important for dealers to look at the market holistically, broad view. But it's even more important for you to really just zone in and really just identify, what part of that market is yours, and what and how much of that data is actually relevant to you.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it really allows you to dial in and
Sure.
to really like, hey, if I'm a store and I sell a lot of trucks, right? I could probably pay more than the dealer across the street because now I'm considered a destination,
Sure.
right? Why
Yeah.
would I, go to 4 or 5 different dealerships because they got 1 or 2 trucks, where now I can go to this one dealer that I know who has a lot of inventory, different trim
Right.
levels, right? Different price points. So, it's really important for other, for dealers and for brands to look inward and, what are my competitive advantages? Does the inventory that I have in my inventory just align, right, with who I am as a dealer and the customers I'm I'm selling to?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So I kind of I asked a really long question, and then we got to talking, and I forgot to come back to the second part of the question. When we're thinking about all this data, and we're thinking about you're thinking what are your advantages and how to stock the right inventory, and you mentioned a lot of variables. What is the frequency that those variables should be looked at? Like should we look at how we have a vehicle priced every week, every day, every 2 hours? Like how frequent is enough or too much? Where's the sweet spot? Where's the Goldilocks spot?
So the variables as far as the color and the mileage, like it's once, because once you bought it, you're not going to change that car,
Fair.
right? But as far as where you're priced at relative to the
Yeah.
market, having your finger on the pulse, like, during seasonality swings, right? Tax season and everything else, you need to look at that daily. And that's why we have automation built in where it automatically tracks your market for you. And a lot of the dealers and used car managers that I talk to that that ask for advice, right? I tell them all the time, I'm like, hey man, if you're evaluating a car and you're solely looking at active inventory in the competitive set, and you're not looking at how long, right? I want you to sort by days, sort by newest vehicles first. We all know that dealers, and I'm guilty of it, when you first get inventory, right? Like when you first buy a car, your strategy for at least a week, maybe 2 weeks, is 100% hope, right? You try to get the most, right? As long as you're not overpriced, but at the end of the day, you're pricing it so hopefully you could make some gross. But then from there, prices significantly drop. You have dealers with 60-day hard turns. So really, it's I can appraise a car one day, and then all of a sudden, like 7 days from now, prices, they're back down to reality. And then all of a sudden it's like, man, I was at 99% price to market a week ago. Now I'm at 96. What
Yeah.
happened? What happened was, prices change, right?
Yeah.
And you need a system that analyzes not only what's going on in the market. That's what a lot of the legacy tools like that, that's what you could get from them. But, you need visibility into what's leaving the market, right? Where were they priced at? What price to market did your competitor who sold a car before you, right? Like what was he doing? What kind of car did they have? And from there, we track both. So a funny story. A couple years ago, we had a dealer that we signed up and
Hmm.
loved our system, and then he ended up canceling. And so this was a dealer that carried a lot of Teslas. And, this is right around the time when Teslas bottom out and, some smaller dealerships closed. A lot of dealers took a hit. And our system was telling him to price his vehicles $1,500, $2,000 over his cost. And that immediately triggered him. He's like, what are you talking about? We're making close to $8,000, $10,000 a copy. We're a Tesla destination, right? This is kind of our thing. We have tons of Teslas.
Yeah.
And anyways, he canceled us, and we're like, okay, well, that's just the data, right? We track every aspect of your market. And he calls us up 2 weeks, or like a couple months later, I think, we followed up, and he said, hey man, like, you guys were right. Had I listened to you, I would have made a little bit on those cars and I wouldn't have lost, $5 grand, $6 grand, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
on those cars. And That's kind of the thing. So that's a long way of answering your question. It's all the time, right? Real time, all the time, and you're looking at all of your inventory.
Yeah.
And the thing that the thing for me, it's every vehicle is unique and they have different characteristics, and it doesn't really matter when you bought the car. Like let's talk
True.
about during tax season, right? Where if I'm forced to buy at the auto auction and prices are going up, I got to keep buying and buying until until it reaches its peak, and I need to unload this inventory as fast as possible. And it's the same thing. It's you can't give yourself a 60-day clock just because I bought it today, right? You
Yeah.
need to look at the market. You need to look at where is it going? Is it going up or is it going down?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And thinking about, evaluating all the time and evaluating each unique vehicle all the time, that concept gets me pretty excited about AI and its implications when it comes to used vehicles. And obviously with AutoVision, we're rolling out Avery, which has been a huge success so far. Every dealer that implements it absolutely loves it. And it's a really big eye opener. But I think the potential is there to really be something pretty massive with what's possible, especially when we're looking at all the aspects that you're talking about, whether it's putting a number on the car, whether it's pricing the vehicle, whatever it is, and everything in between, and being able to evaluate constantly, all the time, each vehicle, each market, and understanding where you're at, what we're able to do today and what we're going to be able to do even into the future with Avery is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it totally is. And to add to that, I'm really proud of what we built inside of AutoVision and the data that we're giving to our dealers, right? Empowering them to make better decisions. But not a lot of dealers, they don't want to spend time geeking out with all the tools that we have, right? I think it's cool. We have a market trends tab that, really it's like your performance manager that'll tell you, how many vehicles are going in the market and leaving the market and everything else. And I'm into that kind of stuff, right? So
Right.
and even when I was, in the front lines buying cars, but a lot of dealers, one, either they're not into it, or two, they're just way too busy. And AI, Avery, well, what Avery can do now, right? It essentially acts as a super user. So it's a used car manager or general manager's advisor that looks at every data point that's available inside of AutoVision and gives you the answer. But it
Yeah.
just doesn't give you the answer. It explains itself. It
Yeah, it
says
shows its work. I love that.
it shows its work, right? So we're not a black box, and
Right.
a lot of times for dealers, they're hey, this is fantastic. My used car manager, he's using it as a sanity check, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Yeah, that makes me feel good, right? Or like,
Right.
wow, okay, I didn't look at that. Like,
Yep.
let me consider things. Maybe I should think about that differently. And some dealers, they think it's an amazing tool to teach new hires,
Yep,
right?
training. I was just going to tell you, I was talking with a dealer just the other day, and he loves it as a training tool. Like, this is how we look at vehicles, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and we barely scratched the surface, right? It's really exciting times being a part of Reynolds and how many products we have inside of the organization, and really just leveraging AI to really just help our dealers and take them to the next level. It's really exciting stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is. No, it's a bright future for sure. Well, Lyle, I want to be super respectful of your time. I could probably sit here. I was just looking. It's like, man, I could talk to you for hours for sure. But I know you got a lot going on and a lot of work still to do. So before we hop off, though, I mean, is there anything we haven't talked about that we should? Anything I didn't ask you about that you want to touch on?
I think we covered a lot. If we start talking about more stuff, I think it'll take another hour because I got to back. So having to choose something to talk about is hard. So
well, hey, we can always do a round two sometime soon.
Totally.
All right, good deal. Well, Lyle Dizon, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And for sure, we'll have to catch up again soon. We can do another one and see where we're at then.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Lyle.
All right. Take care.
Well, AutoVision is one of my favorite products that we have. I love it. I love getting into it. I love what we're doing with AI and with Avery inside of AutoVision. If you haven't seen it, please, please, please check it out. It is worth a look. But with that, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Lyle Dizon. Great car guy, really understands the market, and I'm proud to have him on our team. He's got great insights and a great perspective, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Before we hop off, don't forget you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. Make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.